Hello, my name is Mike Merlino. I'm the superintendent of the Evergreen School District, and we are going to take some time to kind of walk through our fall reopening plan. This is a requirement of the state of Washington. We will be submitting our plan to OSPI tomorrow or today, and you will be having the opportunity to take a look at this. We've got a number of our administrative staff that will kind of talk through various things like attendance, what does the daily schedule look like, and I'll let them do that. But I want to kind of first start off with just reminding everyone that last week on August 11th, our school board approved the reopening plan as required by Washington State OSPI. In that approval process, they approved our start in a remote learning environment. Evergreen is very similar to other districts in Clark County and a lot of districts in the state. I will say I'm actually quite pleased that the county districts have worked quite well together with the department, Clark County Department of Health as well, in coming to this conclusion that we needed to open in a remote learning 2.0 environment. We spent time in the spring working with our parents, with our staff, surveying folks on coming up with a 2.0 model, and you'll have the opportunity to see this in the next few minutes. I also want to mention that recently the governor and the Department of Health put out a decision tree that looks at, the OSPI had put out guidelines earlier that were not attached to the phasing system. They have put out some guidelines. There's going to be a link that you can click on when you go to the website. You can see it on that screen there, the decision tree, that outlines the main thing that the county is looking at with respect to the number of cases per 100,000 in the county, and they kind of have a high, medium, and low. Right now, Clark County is in the high level, but even within the high level, it does allow for us to have students on site. And so the types of students that we will have in some cases right from the beginning, but in groups of 5 or fewer, and we'll work with the guidelines around safety protocols. But the students that they have identified are students for the highest need students, such as students with disabilities, students living homeless, those farthest from educational justice, and younger learners. So when you have an opportunity to look at the decision tree, you'll see that, and our plan, you'll hear, is going to identify those students. We'll work to find students that have the highest needs. Our interest is in bringing our students back, really honestly as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, as well as our staff. It's very important for us to always be considering our staff safety and our student safety. At the same time, it is also very important for us to get our students back into our schools as quickly as we possibly can, and happy to have our folks explain that. Our plan also provides additional supports for technology. We will continue to feed our students as we did. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to use our transportation the same way, but we will have meals available at all the schools. And we will have those students the students that do come in that we will identify, we will have transportation for those as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to our staff. I think Julie Tumblety might be the first one that leads this. And thank you for taking the time to view this webinar.
All right, thank you, Mike. So today we're going to be summarizing what the plan is going to look like for fall of 2020 opening and remote learning. We're going to go over some hot questions that we've heard from the public and pieces that you'll need to know to start your students' year. So specifically attendance and engagement, special education, more details on the remote learning schedule, the plan and the daily schedules, how we're going to get your students materials, what to do to prepare for school, technology, and additional supports.
All right. Thank you, Julie. So one of the first things we want to talk with you about is attendance, and we will be taking attendance daily. At secondary, you will be, used to having it each period. We won't be doing that. We'll be taking it once a day. And in order to do that, students will need to log on to ClassLink. And if you have a district device, all you do is log into that device, and that logs you into ClassLink. If you are not using your district device, there is a ClassLink link on the EPS landing page, the home page, that will take you straight to that, and you log in there. And teachers are able to monitor when you log in, and they will count that as your presence or absence for the day if you do not do that. It is very important that you remind your students, and remember you students, to log in via ClassLink so that you can be marked present for your attendance on a daily basis. Next, we have been hearing lots of questions about how will students receive additional support and when that support looks like in-person service. And so the first part of that is it's a tiered process, if you will. The teacher will be making sure that he or she monitors students' attendance on a daily basis, just like we spoke about. That'll happen once a day. And the teacher will be making contact with the families in order to be that initial communication mechanism so that students' participation in attendance is sustained. And then if a teacher notices that a student's attendance or participation has fallen off, they will implement interventions as soon as possible. The teacher will also be marking on a weekly basis the participation as well as effort. Now, these things combined, attendance, participation, and effort, will be monitored by what we call our student engagement teams. And these teams will be looking at the teacher data and also noticing if students are in need of additional support. They'll be meeting daily with teachers to put plans together for those students. The engagement plans will be using a rubric that I'll share with you in just a minute so that we can see which students need that upper level support that I mentioned before, where it's in person. And then if in fact we get to the place where we have implemented interventions and we are still not successful, then a plan will be created to bring students into the building. On the next slide, I will show you what the student engagement teams will be using to help make that decision. Not only will the student engagement teams be using participation, attendance, and effort, they'll also look at the student's current grade, the teacher concern, as well as the parent concern, so that we have a well-rounded view of what it is that a student will need in order to come into the building. After a student has been designated to come into the building, the student engagement team will then work with that student's teachers to figure out which teachers they need to visit so that they can gain that additional support.
Okay, thank you, Clarissa. My name is JB and I'm the Executive Director of Special Services. I'm going to talk a little bit about special education and special education program in our remote learning program. Had the opportunity to discuss with many parents thus far what this will look like, and wanted to send out a broader message. So first and foremost, special education services will follow the remote learning plan of the district. Everything that Clarissa just spoke of related to supporting students is applicable to students with IEPs. In addition to that, we know in special education, we have to work closely and collaboratively with families. Within the IEP process, for kids who aren't making progress or benefiting, we need to meet and discuss what additional services can be provided. Those services may be individual. They may be delivered live via video or video chat, remote learning, Zoom, Google Meet. I think we're focusing on Google Meet this year. And then in addition to that, you may have group sessions. You may have SLP supports, occupational therapy supports, and those things. Our focus is on ensuring safety and health of students and staff. And through the IEP process, we will be working with individual students on providing remote or also in-person services in groups up to 5. That will be determined through the IEP process. and also would be provided on a consistent scheduled basis for students that would need that level of support because they cannot engage in the remote learning process. Next slide. So through that, IEP managers will be contacting families and discussing how the team can meet, discuss services that are needed, and then implement those services, some of which may be in person, some of which will be remote.
All right, thank you, Jay. Erin.
Hi, I'm Erin Lusich and teaching and learning here in Evergreen. So thank you so much to everybody who provided lots of feedback in the way of qualitative and quantitative data in terms of what has worked and what we needed to do to grow our program in service of kids as we look toward 2.0. So on this slide, you can see kind of those big chunks. There's a lot to say about that. We learned a lot from you. We learned a lot from all of our stakeholders. But to kind of chunk them out a little bit, the top 2 bullets were threaded throughout all feedback from all stakeholders. We need to be clearer with what we expect. We need greater degrees of consistency in our practice in service of children. You can see there was a lot of feedback around, again, what our routines and best practice teaching looks like in a remote context and how we set expectations for that and how we prioritize the learning. We know that it looks different in this context, so we need to be really clear about what we're teaching and focus in on the highest leverage learning experiences and outcomes for students. Communication was a huge one. We need to have mechanisms and structures that allow for our best communication between practitioners, but also between the school and home. So you'll see that threaded throughout all of the components of 2.0. We heard a lot of feedback around the need to be very explicit and intentional around building relationships with students and families and social emotional well-being. So community building and all of the practices related to social emotional learning standards. So you'll see a lot of that threaded through all of these components and in practice when we hit the ground running in September. Clarity around feedback and expectations to kids and the timeliness of that feedback. And that goes hand in hand with grading clarity. Some upgrades to our grading policy due to the flexibility and the guidance from the states. So we're able to be very clear about what's expected and the grace that we are providing students to show and demonstrate proficiency and not be punished for late work, et cetera. So you'll see evidence of that. Greater alignment across the system. We heard a lot about needing to be flexible for students and families because we all have our unique contexts in our home environment. So you'll see a balance of live and on-demand work. And what that means is live would be via, like Jay said, Google Meet or things of the like that are face-to-face virtual experiences in lots of different grouping forms. And also on-demand or previously videoed or prepared teaching or tasks. So you'll see that threaded out, and those experiences can be accessed anytime. They don't have to be accessed at the time they occur in the schedule. We heard a lot from all stakeholders too about provisioning for unique learners, really thinking about the uniqueness of each and every student and making sure that we serve all students and have structures and supports in place. And Jay was just speaking to us about a large group of unique learners. And having common tech tools. We heard this especially from families and students saying it's really helpful if we can be clear about what our comprehensive and tight base of tech tools that we're leaning on and applications that we're leaning on as we approach teaching and learning and remote. So if we could head to the next slide. All of these things helped us to design our we're calling our comprehensive buckets, really, of 2.0. So that from top to bottom, the modified scope and sequences help us really to prioritize learning and assessment, to get really clear about the what. We also have a very articulated operational guidance that help us understand exactly what Clarissa was describing for us in the way of student engagement and what our different roles that we play in service of that. Julie will be talking soon about our distribution process. That's a part of that operational guidance. So just being very explicit and clear so there's no questions about what the asks are and the expectations and the process that we can lean on to best serve students. In the instructional guidance, just to the right of that, is where across every different content area and grade level, we're being explicit about our highest leverage instructional practices and clear about how they're expected to live in a remote environment, because it is different, as we know, and we have to be very explicit about those things in our practice, so that we know how to where to provide PD and support so kids get what they need. At the bottom is where this kind of all starts to come together as we consider our students. So you'll see that you'll get to see today our schedules, and then you'll just know and eventually be able to see evidence that the teams are working together collaboratively to think about who is in the classroom as they consider the content that they're endeavoring to deliver. And at the rightmost corner, bottom corner, it speaks to the week at a glance. This will be really similar to 1.0, only it'll have a different look to it. So we learned throughout the spring that it was really important for us to give you a picture of what the week will hold, give families a picture of that, give students a picture of that, so that there can be some anticipation of where support might be needed or some outreach therein. So that's kind of the highest level picture. There's a lot to be said about all of those layers, and time for us to learn that as we go, I suppose. So if we can move on, we'll just talk about the schedules. When we think about the elementary schedule for remote learning, you'll start to see the color coding means something. The green denotes our live sessions. Again, we're trying to be purposely varied so that students aren't on a screen all day long, expected to be communicating virtually. So there's a variety that a variety of tools that we're leaning on to provision for that flexibility. So the yellow is more of the on-demand or pre-packaged or videotaped lessons or tasks that students will engage in and do so flexibly. This is not only a student on-demand time, this is a time where you'll get to see also the teacher perhaps live and in a small group. This is time where the teacher will be able to, because the students are busily engaging with on-demand work, the teacher will be able to meet with small groups or to host student-to-student collaboratives and collaborative work. Just a quick note about that on the right-hand side of the screen, we will still have middle school band and orchestra, and the students will be accessing that in elementary from 2:30 to 3. And there is a whole different schedule for part-time Excel, which will lean heavily on the Wednesday hours as live sessions with their part-time Excel. So on our website, you'll be able to access those full schedules as well. Moving on to middle school, you'll see something very similar. The color coding means something again. Again, on our website, you'll get to see a key for all of that, if I'm speaking too fast or you want to reference what might happen during those time periods, you can get more detail about that on our website. But again, we're looking at a rotation. There's a reason for Monday and Thursday being different from Tuesday and Friday. We're purposely rotating the experience for students and thinking through a student lens there. So there's a mix of live and on demand. And again, the on demand means also small groups of learners, even as there is prepackaged material for the whole. Here's the high school. It will look really similar with different time allotments. Important to note about high school that Henrietta Lacks runs on a 7-period schedule. So there's a personalized schedule for them, as well as Cascadia Tech on our website. So it'll look a little different. And lastly, this is the key that I was referring to that will also be posted on the website right next to the schedule, so you'll be able to reference what that could look like from a student perspective.
All right, thank you, Erin. Okay, so continuing with remote learning 2.0, one of the other pieces that we heard that was really important was access to materials for students. So our libraries will be open. We are working on a distribution of library books and to get those back and forth with students. Students will have access to textbooks if they are required for the class, as well as classroom sets of books and classroom as needed on demand books. We're also working on getting students manipulatives and classwork back and forth. So our material distribution, we're looking at a couple ideas of how to get those to parents and students and back and forth, with either having school sites, of course, but then also utilizing our busing system to get materials to and from families. Also with materials, it's really important that we have tech ready when school starts. So Brian will be talking about technology.
Thank you, Julie. So technology kind of builds off last spring. Last spring, we were able to get devices out to students very quickly. We also learned a lot about how to get hotspots out there. So if in the spring you had a computer, you keep that computer. So if you're a 5th grader going to 6th grade, keep the computer. The schools will work with you on passwords. So that's an issue for 6th graders, and the schools will work with you on that. And the key piece of the tech support for your student and your family is this EPS tech form. You can see it's in English, Spanish, and Russian. You need to use that, and what happens, it's a school-based process, but it also involves IT. So IT sees it first, and if it's a technical issue, you need a cord, you need a new computer, your computer's not working, and IT starts working with the schools. We have technicians going out to the schools every day, so our plan is if you have an issue, tech issue on Monday or Tuesday, the very next day, we can get it out to you. So we're hoping for 24-hour turnaround. That's our goal. We're not a 24/7 support, but our goal is to have whatever you need the next day. And again, with the devices, if you need a device, you need a cord, any kind of issues, it's a school-based program. So talk to your schools. You can do that through the EPS tech form. And as well, if you need a Chromebook or a hotspot, you do that through the school as well. One other thing we just like to add, particularly for our younger students, but actually for all K-12, is the safety piece. We use a safety program called Relay. It is real time, and it's very focused on self-harm or any kind of issues like that. So anytime you're using a Chromebook or you're in the district sites, that is being used. And as you can see, even in the distance learning environment, safety is our #1 priority. As well, with the student data privacy, we have data sharing agreements with all the software that we use. So it's all confidential, so your students' data will not be shared. I think.
All right, thank you, Brian. Some of the things we just want to remind you as before school starts, if you can and your family can get these done before school starts, we know that you'll have a successful September 1 start. One is to make sure your family email address is current in family access. We're sending out a lot of information, and so that's the best place to receive updates. Also, check that your Chromebook and charger work. So schools are open, and we want to make sure that you have what you need. So if they don't work, use the tech form that Brian just referenced, and let's get you the right materials before school starts. You'll also want to log in. So it's been a long summer and those 3 months can make passwords disappear. So make sure you know how to log in and get your passwords. 6th grade students will need to update their password. So after Monday, August 17th, their password will be updated. An email should have already been sent out to parents. And then just daily, following the schedule, what Erin referenced is if you can look at the week at a glance schedules posted on the school websites. Check Google Classroom daily. Make sure that when you go to the live sessions, you have paper and pencil with you. These live sessions are interactive, and so you want to be prepared to be actively learning with them. Just like we want you to be on time to class, when you're in a brick and mortar school, you need to be on time to your live class sessions so you don't miss anything. And we know it's hard learning in your home environment, but trying to find a location with the least amount of distractions as possible. And then the additional supports that we're providing, that meals are available. They're going to be available at your neighborhood school, breakfast and lunch. Please apply for free and reduced lunch. When you apply for that, it doesn't just give you free meals. There are other benefits as well as discounts on testing and other resources at school. Our family and community resource centers will be open. So call your school for the hours of those being open. And then one of the other things we're excited about is to offer some affordable daycare and day camp options at a few of our schools. So we're currently coordinating with some community partners to offer those options. So specifically coming up, we're going to send out more information. There's going to be some videos about tech support coming out. We're going to send out secondary schedules in the next couple weeks. As through August, there's always some tweaks made, so we send those out usually about a week before school starts. Elementary class assignments are still being made. Those will be coming out soon. School offices are open as of August 18th. And don't forget, we are following all Department of Health guidelines. So especially when we think about when we're moving to the hybrid model, we're right now in remote and we're going to stay here until it's safe to do so and move on. Okay,
yeah,
Mike.
Can I say something about that real quick? Again, I think our county has worked really well with the Clark County Public Health and Dr. Melnick and have kind of come up with some protocols with respect to hybrid. We do anticipate that we'll be in remote learning for definitely a period of weeks at the beginning of the year, but what we need to see is the county move to the moderate phase with respect to the number of cases per 100,000, and then remain there for a number of weeks in order for us to have the opportunity to get to hybrid in K through 5. So we are looking at that and working closely with them, and we'll continue to provide information on that as well.
All right, thank you. So we're hopeful that we're able to answer a lot of the questions that were out there in the community. We are excited about our program and think that what has been created and worked on overall summer is going to be the best remote option that we can provide your kids, and we're excited to welcome them back to EPS.
And I would like to just say thank you to the Evergreen staff. I would like to say thank you to our parents for working with us. This is, I've said many times, unprecedented territory. The spring was a different set of circumstances. I think that we've worked extremely hard over the summer to create this 2.0 program. I also want to thank our school board, who's participated in weekly meetings as we've worked through this, and also our labor groups. So as everyone has said, we are looking forward to school starts 2 weeks from today. I think this is being released on the 18th, so September 1st. And if no one else has anything else to add, just thank you for your support. And like it says, if you have additional questions, please contact your neighborhood school, and we certainly will respond to any questions that are sent our way as well. Thank you very much.